The U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill today to fight what they believe is price gouging at the pump. But will that bill get signed into law? In this video, I'm going to talk about why I'm not so convinced. So smash that like button and subscribe if you're new. You're watching More Money. Let's get it. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel where the mission here is to help 1,000 people achieve financial independence much sooner. And let's dive right into this. So you can see here from this Financial Post article that came out today that the US House passed a bill on Thursday that allows the US President to issue an emergency declaration making it unlawful for companies to excessively increase gasoline and home fuel prices. But here's the problem. The article did go on to state that the bill must pass the Senate, which is unlikely to happen and then be signed into law by President Joe Biden. And the reason for that is because in the Senate, they're just likely not going to have enough Republican support for it. Because even in the House, it was divided by party lines, with all Republicans voting against it and most Democrats voting for it, albeit 4 Democrats moved away from the Democratic position and actually voted against it as well. And that point is made here by CNN, where they say that the vote was largely down party lines, with 4 Democratic reps joining the Republicans in voting no. I underlined one Republican rep, Stephanie Murphy from Florida, because they actually quoted her here of saying that this bill could further reduce supply. At best, this is a distraction that won't likely address the problem, she said in a statement. At worst, it could make the problem much more severe. So what exactly is she talking about? Well, here's the thing. When you artificially restrict prices in economies, generally what the idea there is that you also don't want people to rush and purchase mass amounts of that product. So you restrict the supply of that product as well. But then what ends up happening is people sort of pick up on that and then they rush to buy that particular product. And generally it's obviously a need-based products like fuel or food or anything of that like. And that's exactly what we experienced as we have done this historically. Here's an article that was released in 2006 where they discuss how gas price controls actually sparked shortages in the 70s. And at the bottom here, you see I've highlighted that this author states that artificially depressed pump prices that were imposed during the oil crisis of 1973 brought about lines at gas stations and an artificial shortage of gas. And I think we're all aware why that happens. The price controls that they put in resulted in a fuel rationing system that made available approximately 5% less oil than was consumed before the controls. So consumers actually scrambled and sat in lines to ensure that they weren't left without gas. And in fact, what ended up happening is gas stations found that they only had to stay open a few hours a day to empty out their tanks. And so what they inevitably ended up doing is actually shut down their gas stations earlier because they ran out of gas to save on employee costs, which actually pushed up their profits even further. But early gas station closures of gas stations that were previously open 24 hours a day freaked out customers even more, which raised the public's panic level to a feverish pitch, and it caused more people to wait in lines, which caused more rationing as well, which once again caused more lines. And it ultimately brought on the gas black market. And what you even saw is violence occur because with lines forming, fistfights were breaking out at the pump. And so when President Carter came into office, he quickly waived most controls on oil and gas prices to make fuel more available. And of course, you guys know exactly what will happen when you have price controls on fuel and then they take those price controls off. The sharp increases in those prices resulted with a different problem, double-digit inflation, as businesses had to pass on those higher fuel costs, and workers, unions, and just sort of employee wages demanded higher cost of living increases to keep in pace with higher prices. And of course, that higher level of general market inflation caused the Federal Reserve to act, and they raised rates, which pushed the economy into a recession. So inevitably, legislation aimed at fixing the price of gasoline that's vaguely worded so they can just decide exactly what excessive amounts of gas prices are will only result with gas lines and shortages. and inevitably we'll have to end up doing away with them, which will plunge us into a recession again, in my opinion. But I don't want to alarm you guys. I actually don't think this happens because right now the Senate doesn't have enough votes to pass it. However, if you go into the midterms and now you have the Senate that's controlled by the Democrats, now you have a different problem where they could pass something like this. But I must note that early polling is suggesting that the opposite is going to happen during the midterm. So it's probably good from the perspective of not getting price controls on gas stations. But the other item that they are trying to propose right now is windfall taxes on gas. Guys, the issue with profit taxes for oil companies is that it inevitably just causes oil companies to drill less. And that's the problem we're having right now, where US oil companies are not drilling as much as at least the current incumbent government would like them to do so. So it'd be counterintuitive to what the government is asking for right now by issuing windfall taxes for US oil and gas companies. So I don't know if that'll happen. But the other thing is, this is a global market. If you just tax the companies that are American-based or pay American taxes, then all you're doing is making them less competitive on a global market. And all that's going to do is increase your imports like it did back in the 70s and 80s. So I just don't think that's a good policy either. But with that said, things aren't getting any better for investors right now because the market is down almost 20% year to date. But as far as I'm concerned, someone who was mostly in cash in 2021, I just couldn't buy stocks because I thought they were considerably more expensive than I'd like to pay for them. I'm now starting to see some opportunities open up. So you can see in our Patreon investment tracker that the Patreons get access to at the $5 a month level that we are starting to see stock prices get cheaper. We have around 6 or 7 names that are trading under 50% of their intrinsic value, and a whole slew of names that are now starting to get to that level. So I'm absolutely going to be looking to buy into this weakness as this market continues to decline. And we don't know how much further this market could decline. I am totally okay with the market going down another 30%, so an overall 50% decline. I don't think we see that, but I'm going to be sporadically looking for opportunities, and I'm going to be using my tracker to find those opportunities. Now, if you're not a part of the Patreon, no problem. You can sign up at that $5 a month level and get access to the tracker model, but also know that if you're not satisfied, you don't like it for any reason, you can absolutely reach out to me and say, hey, Tay, this is not for me, and no questions asked, will fully refund 100% of your first month's payment. So there's no risk for you. Now, with that said, the Twitter fiasco is turning into a bit of a circus, and I actually covered the latest developments of it, which you can get to right here.